How can people start a podcast if they have no audience or they're just starting out?
Yeah, I think the important understanding is, I would say the vast majority of people don't have an audience or they don't have a consumer base when they start something. It's kind of easy when you do. So most people start from a place of, I'm trying to grow everything. The thing that stops most people is lack of clarity. So what I tell people, it might not seem super valuable, but I always say, figure out what problem you're trying to solve. Figure out who you're trying to solve that problem for, and figure out what makes you unique in solving that problem. Those three pieces of clarity are huge for you to actually get the ball rolling. And then I just say, create the lowest barrier to entry that's the most sustainable. What can you do? You can literally go on a free app and start producing content directed towards your ideal listener. And that's it. That's what you do. And then here's the other thing. And I think you and I were talking about business behind the scenes. You try to have the most realistic expectations possible that your first episode is going to suck and you're not going to get a lot of listeners. The first month you do it, you're probably not going to get any love. But, 6 months in, 8 months in, 10 months, 12 months, that's where things can start to happen. So you have to understand that building an audience, especially an aligned, engaged audience, just takes time. And if you start from a place of, I'm 6 months in and I don't have a huge following yet, you're setting yourself up for a lot of pain and potential failure. It's the expectations are super important.
My next question was, how do you do it faster? How do you grow an audience faster? But you almost kind of already answered that, right?
Well, so what I think is super important is building relationships. So when people say to me, okay, I'm doing these things, how can I build an audience faster? I always say, when you share your content on social media, or let's put it this way, create as many opportunities as possible for your listener base to self-identify as listeners. So we have 750,000 downloads as of today. I don't know who 749,000 of those people are. I have no idea who they are. So if I don't know who they are, I can't really go start conversations with them. And if I don't start conversations with them, I'm not warming up the relationship. So if you want to get more listens faster, if you want to grow faster, you have to build relationships with the people who are listening. Because here's the thing. If we can get somebody who is only listening to 1 episode a month to listen to 4, that's a big jump.
How does it extend your reach in podcasting?
Number one, YouTube is the second biggest search engine on the planet. TikTok is kind of coming up there, so I don't know if that stat is still true. I would say it probably is. But here's the thing. You're catering to a completely different audience. And I think that's where people get confused, is they say, well, I have a podcast. There's no reason for me to put that on YouTube. YouTube is a completely different audience that might not even listen to podcasts. So you're losing a massive amount of eyes if you don't at least give it a try.
What about other ways to promote your podcast, like ads, like Overcast ads or audio ads? Has anything worked well for you, or do you see stamina, like you said earlier, being the key factor?
The only thing we've ever done in terms of paid ads, we tried some Pinterest marketing because our demographic is a demographic that uses Pinterest, but that was only like a couple $100. I haven't done a lot with paid ads because honestly, for us, we put all of our money back into the business, building the team, creating better content. One of the things I've seen is the more niched you are, usually the better the ads actually work.
And what about if you were starting a podcast today, knowing everything you've learned over 1,000 episodes? What would you do differently?
I was talking to somebody about this the other day. I would be more intentional about the name and the branding. And one of the reasons I say that is because we started a show originally. It was called the Hyperconscious Podcast. Nobody is searching for hyperconscious. Most people don't even know what that means. So understanding that the first word of your title is unreasonably important, especially on the podcast apps, understanding that, I probably would have reverse engineered my title based off of searchability and not saying, I'm going to name it whatever I want and then just make it grow. That would be one thing. And then I think I probably would have started a Facebook group sooner, because our demographic is a demographic that values Facebook groups. And we have one, and it's great, and we have a lot of engagement and a lot of great relationships being built. But we waited 3 years, I think, to start that. I think if we started it earlier, it would have been more beneficial because it helps you build. Here's what I think it's an important understanding for podcasters. Your podcast is a problem solver. People tune into your podcast because it helps them at least have an awareness or tactics to solve problems. And my question for all podcasters is, after the episode ends, where do you want people to go? Where are they supposed to go? Are they supposed to wait till next week, till another episode comes out? Or do you have a Facebook group? Do you have a mailing list? Do you have events that you do? I think if we had the Facebook group earlier, it would have just benefited us at a deeper level.
What about SEO? Have you intentionally, used strategies for your podcast or for blogs relating to the content you're creating, or any thoughts on that?
We have for blogs in the past. We got to get back on that. It's, there's been a lot of growth and infrastructure that we've been building that we haven't been doing. The hard part, and I think this is like the uncertain part, is when it comes to podcasts, I don't think the SEO is really up to the standard yet, where, you got to think, the apps aren't super connected to the outside world. There's so many different apps, you don't know how it's actually going to connect. And there's a lot of different podcast titles that have similar words, similar phrases, same guests. So I do not know where the future of SEO for podcast specific is going, but I do think, the YouTube route is huge, blogs is huge, and then really just leaning into like, what are people searching for when they're searching for your guests? I think those are 3 opportunities.
And what about the future of podcasting? What are you excited about, or what do you think's changing?
One of the things I think is changing quickly, and I think it's going to continue changing, is I think people are way overusing ads and sponsorships. And I think one of the benefits of listening to podcasts in the beginning was there was no ads. There was no sponsorships. It was just a fly on the wall of a conversation. I think people are taking advantage of that, which some people, that's how they monetize. So you do you. I think that's going to start shifting the other way, where people are going to stop listening to shows that have so many ads, even if they like the shows. Because if you look at the reviews of some of the more popular podcasts, when they start using too many ads, you see a lot of negative reviews. Those people are going to go somewhere else. So I think the shift is moving away from that type of monetization and really, really understanding, how do you monetize your podcast as a business, as a service provider, as a product division. Like, how can your podcast actually make money in the real world, not from sponsorships and ads? Because I think the end user they don't want that. The people who listen to podcasts, you don't want to have to skip ads. You want to throw it on and just let it go. So I think that's big. And then I think at some point, I'm sure all the podcast platforms are going to get to the point where they have video. I can't imagine that not happening. So making sure that you're doing video and you're doing micro content, I think is going to be very, very, very big. Those are a couple things. Yeah, those are the big ones. And here's the thing, and you mentioned this earlier, the staying power. The staying power is really, that's where you're going to see the differentiation between people who make it and people who don't, because there's a lot of people who start and they do it for 6 months or whatever. You're going to see the cream start rising to the top. The people who have done so many episodes, it's going to start to show through eventually.